Greetings, Church of St. Michael. Father Froehle here. Today I'll be reflecting with you on the virtue of justice. Last week we reflected on how prudence is that virtue that helps us to see reality correctly and to make correct decisions. And today we're going to see how justice helps us to respond appropriately and according to each person around us. Justice is a term that I hear thrown around quite a lot these days, and I think it's good for us to pause for a little bit and to reflect on what do we even mean by justice? Why do we expect justice to be a part of our lives? And what are the concrete steps we're going to need to take in order to be just ourselves? So with the first question, what is justice? Justice is defined in our tradition as giving each person their due. To put it another way, it means that we give to each person what they deserve. But for us to actually be able to do that, we have to understand, why do they deserve anything at all? What is their due? Where is that rooted? What's interesting is that as I've been reflecting and reading on this, is to discover that St. Thomas Aquinas ultimately recognizes that the reason why we have anything accorded to us at all as a right is precisely because of our relationship to God. That because God made us as persons, that's why we actually have a right to anything. And what's profound about that is that if that's true, it means then that in order for us to truly be just, we must always keep this relationship in mind. That I am a created child of God. That the person in front of me is also a created child of God. And if we ever lose sight of that, we will ultimately also lose sight of their rights and their dignity that are to be accorded to them. So, with this knowledge that each of us, as a created person by God, endowed with certain rights, it means then that now we actually have obligations that are imposed upon us because of those rights. There are certain things that I must do to you for particular reasons, and vice versa. There's an obligation. So that means then that justice is always oriented towards another. And because it's oriented towards another, it's also external. What I mean by this is that it's not enough for us to have a sort of right sentiment. I mean, that's helpful and it's a good place to start. But we must do more than just think correctly about a certain thing or feel rightly about something. We actually are also called then to act accordingly, meaning that when I recognize an obligation towards another, I actually have to do it. And that's where justice can be a challenge, because frequently the sort of thing that I owe to another person might frequently demand something of me. And that can oftentimes be hard to want to give up. But this is precisely why we have to continue to practice the virtues, because just like with any sort of skill or sport or habit, the more we practice it, the easier it ultimately does become. So the more that we practice giving each person their due, what is accorded to them, the more just we will become. And this is a great gift, and it's a reason why I'd really like to encourage each of us, as part of this parish, to be reflecting on what are the things that I need to do to respect the rights of others. What are the things that are accorded to them, even if it might demand something of me? And for help with that, I want to lift up to you Saint Joseph as a patron. Saint Joseph is frequently recorded as being the righteous man in the scriptures, and so he is a model of justice and doing things according to what is due to another. And so I think his intercession will be particularly helpful for us as we seek to be just ourselves. One last word. Prudence helps us to be just because when we see reality correctly, we can actually see what rights and what is owed to our neighbor. I hope you all have a beautiful rest of your week. Know that I will be praying for you in these days as we approach the great season of Lent. And let us strive to be just in our daily lives so that we can emulate the actions of St. Joseph and eventually obtain the reward that he already participates in, the eternal gift of heaven. God bless.